Hello, good morning, and welcome to Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis platform with me, Samson Ladi Anyanini. Today, we give you a second installment and perhaps the final on the Ejapa mineral royalties deal. Questions have come up. Has the value of the royalties that we seek to assign as a sovereign state to a company in which we have 51% for the purposes of monetizing our royalties, has there been undervaluation? Is it true that we could get twice or even more, giving up only half or less than what we are seeking to give for $500 million? Will the deal be withdrawn? Will it be suspended? Why? And why not? The Minister of Finance is here in the studio to take your questions. What is the purpose we seek with this project? So get ready and let's have your questions for the minister. That will be for our first segment, and in the second segment we have yet another panel to continue the debate and hopefully to conclude the debate on the path forward. How do we continue if Ejapa must stay? We'll be right back to deal with the vexed matters. Welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. We go to my take. And I disappoint my colleague lawyers on the lawyers platform who invite me to comment about the reckless manner in which the courts and judges are being abused on live television, and nobody seems to want to talk about it. People have gone to jail for saying similar insults at judges, and we're dealing with someone who just recently also, abused the former Chief Justice, Georgina Wood, in such a very reckless manner. I believe that the courts know how to do this work, and so I've done quite a bit of it on this show over the period. The court should take the necessary steps if it is minded to do so. There are people who will not dare step foot on the Ghanaian soil because of similar comments at judges and so on. So let the courts act, and always in the same fashion. Now my take, I'll just give you an introduction and then you read it on my joyonline.com, because we have a very important guest and to help you understand the Ejapa deal. Intelligence Act. New laws must not create new problems. New laws must not create new problems. Parliament just gave us a new security and intelligence law awaiting signature by the President. It corrects mistakes in the old security and intelligence architecture shortly after what the infamous Ayawaso debacle exposed. It kills our BNI now, and then the BNI is reborn in an NIB. And hopefully the new name means the old dies with the bad practices and complaints of human rights abuses. It must be an oversight that the newly minted Narcotics Control Commission and its head are not listed in the agency coordinated state fight against sophisticated crimes, including terrorism and drug trafficking. in my take today, I invite the National Security Council to quickly fix this blunder using Section 12(3) of the Act when assented to by the President. Read my take, a bit academic, on my Joy Online for many other reasons why fixing this obvious blunder is urgent. The Narcotics Control Commission and its head certainly must be on the national intelligence or national security architecture. Now let's get to deal with news file this morning as far as the major issue is concerned. And as you know, last week we dedicated the entire program to dealing with the Ejapa mineral royalties question. This morning, we are privileged to have the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, to join us, help us understand who Ejapa is and who Ejapa is not. Is Ejapa withdrawn, suspended? Why? Right. We will do a second segment where Dr. Tony Obing, founder and president of Africa Institute of Extractive Industries, AIEI, will join us. Dr. Theo Echampong, economist and political risk analyst, Aduji Kujo Tamaklo, lawyer and member NDC, National Communications and Legal Team, and Dr. Steve Mante, our chairman, Alliance of CSOs, working on extractive anti-corruption and good governance. So it is yet another round on the Ejapa deal. Mr. Ofori-Atta, thank you very much for making the time to join us on Newsfile.
Thank you, Samson. It's good to be back here.
Great to see you.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Right. Great. Okay, so there's been a lot of talk, and as you know, we have spent almost 2 weeks talking about Ejapa.
Yeah.
So a number of issues have come up. As you know, about 15 CSOs have said a number of things that you were not pleased with, some of the comments that they made. And then we have had other experts also write articles to try and suggest that you are heading the wrong way and that you need to pause and redirect how you are going.
Yeah.
First, how do you answer to the questions of lack of disclosure, lack of engagement, lack of consultation with the people of Ghana? Because you are dealing with mineral royalties.
Right.
These are minerals that are entrusted in the president, and the president holds them in a trust position for and on behalf of the people of Ghana.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much. I think it's really been an unfortunate situation in terms of what has transpired, but we all learn from that, and it actually inures to the spiritedness of our democracy, which we have to. The question always in all of these is a question of balance, and therefore really relevant questions of transparency and valuation and conflicts of interest. I think are things that should be put out there for us to discuss. The question is really ensuring that it does not lead to a situation where we torpedo something that may invariably be good for the Republic. So that's how I see it, and I did meet with the CSOs,
right?
And I think we had a pretty frank and open, and I pray that they realize that there was no ill motive in whatever we have done. I think fundamentally, Samson, the questions they asked, I suspect that there's a lot more information out there and people know. This has been, in effect, I would say a 4-year process. I say 4 years because NDC had 2010 and 2011 in which they examined this model or paradigm. And then we, since 2018, have been talking to Parliament about it and in discussion forms. So I don't think anybody can pretend that it has not been in the public. And Parliament, of course, represent 275 constituencies of all of the nation. So yes, we've done that. I think the other backdrop, and maybe that was what our blind side was, is that Samson, this is the first government that has actually signed a memorandum of understanding with the unions and employers, especially when we're getting out of the IMF and saying that, we need that engagement so that there's irreversibility in our decisions. And then we went on to also sign a memorandum of understanding with the faith-based organizations. And we saw the relevance of it during the COVID in terms of our sociology of supplying food to make sure it gets there. So really, for us, I think the next move is to have such an understanding of the CSOs so that we take out the bile from whatever we have. So yes, there's always space to facilitate this dialogue and maybe engage more people, and we endeavor to do that. But I think the fundamental question of whether this company, quote unquote, is transparent and is therefore owned by government is very clear from the Minerals Income and Investment Act, that yes, it's 100% owned by government. Further on, the registration of Ejapa in Jersey is also 100% owned by MIV until such time as we go for the listing. So whether they are beneficial interests, etc., I think that can be really put to bed, and we should all be clear about that level of transparency. Then I guess the issue become the purpose of it, but the purpose.
So we'll get to the purpose. Yeah. The question of transparency, if we can exhaust it a bit, and consultation.
Yeah.
So you make us understand, and the CSOs are happy that you gave them the opportunity to meet with you and to get some further and better particulars about this deal. And I'm sure we have heard some of them who made some comments earlier, now refining some of the comments that they had to make with the benefit of the information that you gave them. But, for example, if it's been almost a 4-year project,
right,
and you came in and started it in 2018.
That's correct.
The question is, how do you justify, if there is no justify what appears to be the secrecy in the manner it's been handled? And here is what I mean. The parliamentarians, the opposition, complain that they had only 4 hours, barely 4 hours, to examine 4 major agreements and 3 other documents regarding this. A total of 7 different, transactional documents. Without sufficient time, they were not giving the things they asked for. How do you explain that?
It does baffle me because the principle, at least for me, what I work with when there is a transaction of some sort, it's really to dig deeper than what purportedly has been done. I'm not sure what we did not give parliamentarians through the Finance Committee in the various meetings that we had. What I don't know is I don't know the final price, so I can't give that. I don't know what else is a mystery, really, when we talk about this transaction.
They say that, for example, they wanted to be able to investigate into the background of this particular entity. They were not giving any details about the entity.
Samson, this is just a phone call.
Okay.
And the way in which, because of AML, CFT issues, the way in which responses are done. To find out what myth is about is Ghana Registrar General's Department to find out details of a company incorporated in Jersey. It's really a phone call away. So we can make, you know, a meal out of this and create this sense of lack of information. But truly, I think we need to get to the substantive part of this.
Yes, but know? This has become such a major aspect of the discussion, and I think that the more information we have and explanation we have from you about it, it will help the process going forward, whether what they are saying is true. So they say that they are representatives of the people in Parliament, and they have an oversight role, which is very critical. And you are saying or suggesting here that they should be finding out from the Registrar General. They needed the prospectus, they said they needed projected cash flows, underlying assumptions, and the dividend policy.
Yeah.
The members of Parliament you wanted to pass to study and approve of 4 major agreements: the investment agreement, the relationship agreement, the management agreement, and the assignment agreement, together with 3 other, you know, processes.
Yeah.
You should be handing them that information.
Right. Samson, you know, when we talk about, let's say, dividend policy, for example, and when you are going to market, forward making statements are difficult to make because of the impact of what you are going to do. As to whether we provided a sense of what this company is about, the clarity of the mineral royalties that will come to this entity, I think that was provided, okay, because that really is pretty much public. So once you have that, you know what it is of the countries that we are ceding away. And then it comes to the issue of valuation, which valuation, you know, also you price at the point of which you've done the roadshow and you're about
giving
to
up to, as they say, 3 years. And you're talking about assigning for, as it were, in perpetuity. And they say they were giving only 3 years of cash flow. And that's not sufficient enough to assess them to make, you know, take a good oversight responsibility for the people.
Samson, what do you have? And you know, there's fact and there's truth, okay? And I think we need to be clear about that. So in terms of historicals as to what the value of our royalties are and projections, I guess in a sense 3 years will give you the most insight into everything else is a projection. So once you have the 3 years, you have a clear view of what is going. But the issue going forward with these transactions of valuation is that in the end, you are going to do this as a multiple of the net asset value compared to what else is on the market. And that's what happens. In the same way in which I go to Parliament, I ask for their forbearance and they give me approval to go and get $3 billion. Now, as to whether it's going to be 41 years, it's going to be 6.875%, etc., I can't even begin to do that. And that's $3 billion, okay? So we are looking at an issue of 500 million, for example, if we wanted to just do nominal. So the fact of the matter is that, yes, there was a 3-year cash flow in which we understood. Everything else is projection. Dividend policy, you can't declare, except that when you look at comparables, you know that they typically do 30%. So it's not a question of mischief or trying to keep information away from Parliament. Then, so you cure that and you move. So what are we trying to do for the nation? And we move on that, you know. So I really believe the 3-year cash flow captured the essence of what, quote unquote, the country was using and to capitalize this company and create value for it. Dividend policy, you can't quite, except to assume that it will be between the 30% range as others do royalty companies on the market.
It is also suggested that the Attorney General only lately was brought into the whole picture. And now she began to now offer advice and give advice 4 different occasions, which advice, at each point, she kept insisting that certain things ought to be done and done right. So the question is, even the Attorney General, the state's principal lawyer, cannot be said to have been part of the process for the 2-year period. Why that development, if that is true, from the facts as you know them?
Yeah, and that it makes me very nervous when we talk about that, because really, with all of these, so even with bills and acts that we go to Parliament with, we have a retreat, we go through things, they say no, we change. So that dialogue to be interpreted as the AG not being part of it, it's palpably wrong. The AG is supposed to interrogate anything you bring, and she may have a different view. You discuss it, and then she understands how far she wants you to go, and with the Republic as a preeminent reason why she does things. So that dialogue cannot be misconstrued as AG not participating.
In respect of that, the Imani asked a question. How was Cabinet able to approve a deal in March 2020 when as late as May 28th, 2020, the Attorney General was complaining of not having seen the 4 main agreements involved in the transaction besides the relationship agreement? What exactly was presented to Cabinet to review and approve? That's a legitimate question.
Oh, it can be. Cabinet has quite a number of processes and hurdles that we go through. What we discuss with the economic management team, what then goes to the Cabinet subcommittee on economic planning and finance, that we go through, what comes to Cabinet, and then what the President also does. Because in the end, Cabinet is an advisor to the President. So all of those things, were done, and therefore it's quite an unclear view of the processes we go through. I think once you begin to put cynicism aside, things that we do will not be colored the way in which they are colored. Because fundamentally now, after I guess 2-3 weeks, there's a sense that, oh, okay, so it's an issue of you should have consulted the CSOs or other people a little bit more.
And you have committed that you are going to do that now, having started the first meeting with the CSOs, and you're even going to involve the chiefs.
Yeah, we will, okay. and as you know, the issue of the development fund, which is 20% of royalties, I mean, it's not been touched at all. So that aspect of our national policy orientation was not at all tampered with.
Okay. So would you agree that, with the benefit of hindsight, the approach ought to have been different, ought to have been sort of a bottom-up? That's not what appears to have happened?
Yeah, I'm not sure. And I did start with these historic partnership agreements with union and employers and with faith-based organizations. So yes, I think the issue of continual dialogue is important. You have to bring people along with you. I remember, I think sixth form, one of our literature books was Coriolanus, one of Shakespeare's.
Right.
And his tragic flaw was in not listening enough. Okay. So it's good. I mean, our nature, the Ministry of Finance, through these 45 months or so.
So finally, on that point, what's going to be the nature of the engagement?
I think we'll get a little bit more literature out. That will be public and website publications. Seek audience with the Council of State, with the regional National House of Chiefs. Really let people know that this is part of a plan in terms of strengthening our financial services sector in this country.
We can talk about the valuation question, which is a big issue now. That you're giving away, you're shortchanging the country by what you're doing, because we could get even more by giving less. That's the suggestion that you have had groups like Imani. You have also had Kofi Ansah and Ofori-Atta, who have been in this industry for quite a while, also seem to suggest. But before that, you had mentioned that we started this long ago, and that the NDC examined this model or paradigm. Those are your words. Did they exactly examine this model or paradigm?
I think really what I'm saying is that it shouldn't be a transaction that is unknown. Okay, you know, I think they went as far as, and then the Attorney General said that the corporate structure they were doing could not be done. I don't know why they abandoned it, but NDC does abandon a lot of things.
Right, but they had not intended to, as it were, give off some of the shares to anybody. It was going to be 100% Ghanaian owned.
Great.
This is not going to be 100% Ghanaian owned. 49% will go away.
Up to 49%.
Right.
Up to 49%.
Up to 49.
So something, you know, we've never apologized that we are a center-right party. It's never been and they're a social democratic party. So that's it. So if there's a principal disagreement in that, that's okay. You know, but we believe that yields a lot more results for the country than something. You know, since the 15th century, we've been trading in gold to the Portuguese. They come, they put the beads and the alcohol in front, they go to their ships, and then we bring our gold and silver and they take it away. Continually, dealing in the physical. We have continued to that. You can see where we are with gold, okay? So the question, and then right now in the international markets, 500 times of trading over the physicals, okay? And the value add is there. You ask yourself, you know, how long are we going to remain in the 15th century? Continually, for us to be the largest producer in gold in Africa, and see where the world is going with regards to the need for resources, and say, let's play with the same model. You know, you can always question about going to the stock market, etc., because you believe differently. But that's okay.
Okay, so let's get to the valuation, because obviously, as we have known over the period now, if the NDC suggested, even remotely, that they were in principle against monetizing or securitizing our mineral royalties, then they would be wrong. Because the history you just referred to in 2010 and 2011 is there, that there was that plan. And then when the main law itself, the Minerals Income Investment Fund Act, was being passed, there was no opposition. We have no record of opposition by the minority as regards Section 3, which gives the MIF the power to set up a special purpose vehicle with very clear terms. And if I may just refer to that, so that...
I mean, the issue is, I mean, Section 2, 3, and 4 clearly enable you to do foreign exchange, foreign transactions, and
so Section 3 is what I was referring to, that Parliament collectively gave power to the fund to create and hold equity interest in a special purpose vehicle in any jurisdiction in furtherance of its object, and the special purpose vehicle shall be free to operate as a regular commercial company. They gave it power to procure the listing of the special purpose vehicle on any reputable stock exchange that it considers appropriate. They gave it power to assign or transfer all or any of its rights to minerals income to a special purpose vehicle in furtherance of the objects of the fund, including through allocation of agreements and stability agreements, so to speak. So, I mean, we know that in principle they cannot say that they're against it. But now let's get to the question of the value.
Okay.
And the fact that we could get far more giving less.
Okay. I have listened, and I am asking, how do they know the value that we are going to get for the entity? When I'm going for a bond transaction, we don't know what interest rates we are going to get or the maturity, okay? Except we do the roadshow and then we strike a price at the same time, at a certain moment in time. In the same way, you go to the stock market to do an IPO, you don't know the value until we strike the price pre-listing, okay? So this is what's going to happen, Samson. This is an IPO, is a company that is just in operation, and so you have to build a balance sheet, okay? So you take your international auditors, and they create a balance sheet for you, looking at the royalty cash flows that would come and build it up. But it's very conservative because you are just really trying to create a book value so that the company has a balance sheet. But that in no way reflects the valuation that you are going to have. In the end, when we go to market something, I'm going to look at something called a net asset value, okay? And when we look at the market right now, it's anywhere from 0.6 times NAV to about 3.2 times NAV for Franco-Nevada and Co., okay? And so it is through the process of the IPO, the roadshow, that we then will strike the price. Have we ever gone to the market and not come back with a better price? I think we have proven that we do. So I think it's all part, of the speculation that what was represented as book value is a valuation that we are going to have for the company. And if we look at Ashanti, for example, the purported book value was, I think, $480 or so, or $460 million in 1993, and we went to the market at $1.8 billion. So once we put that explanation aside, I mean, this is not a government.
So I've just gone to clause 4 of the amended agreement. So you're asking where this figure is coming from as the value. And clause 4 of the amended agreement says, it's titled Value of Rights Assigned to Royalty Co.
That's correct.
Subject to the satisfaction of the conditions set out in clause 2.1, effective date, Royalty Co. shall acquire from the fund, and the fund shall assign to Royalty Co. the rights granted to Royalty Co. under its agreement, including, for the avoidance of doubt, the allocated mineral royalties to be received by Royalty Co. in accordance with clause 3.1a, allocated mineral royalties obligation above, for the value of $1 billion.
Yeah.
So
what does that got to do with the IPO value? That's the question I'm asking. Something, if you went to the Register General today to start a Joy FM, you say, oh, okay, this is my stated capital based on what I think. Now, if you come to Ken and say, Ken, do you want to participate in this? It's not that stated value that you are going to use. We're going to negotiate to see the type of work you're going to do, what the cash flows are, etc. So I guess not to sort of extend the argument, but to assure Ghanaians and them that that is not the basis for valuation in which we will get our IPO price. It's very different. And I just wanted to use the Ashanti as an example for that. So we have a history, in that area, and we'll strike the appropriate price. And Samson, this is, I guess, the best showing of gold in the world that we've ever seen. Okay, so even that throws in an incredible variable in which we cannot, as a nation, sit and let this moment pass by.
So these group of experts and CSOs leveraging on what they know, you suggest that are engaged in speculation on the basis of facts that don't exist in relying on clause 4 of the amended agreement, as I have just referred to. Number one.
No, I mean, no, I don't want to really get into...
Kofi Ansan,
no, I respect all of them.
They say this when they wrote. They say that if we were to assume that gold prices will drop from the current 1900 plus an ounce to, let's say, 1500 for the period 2020 to 2023, on current production projections, the royalty revenues from just the 11 existing producing mines for those 4 years that will be transferred to the Ejapa companies under this transaction would in 2020 money be more than 1 billion. This does not include future royalties from the mines coming upstream eminently, such as those at Obuasi and the highly promising Nandini mine near Bogatanga, nor does it include post-2023 projected production of the 11 mines. They're talking about valuation. Imani talks about the same valuation and says we have undervalued by as much as, is it 60, 50%?
So you come back to, you have undervalued. So what is the base? The base is the 1 billion. I've explained what the 1 billion represent, which is different from the valuation I'll go to the IPO market with. So at that juncture, you know, what are we saying? Now the question as to whether your future flows, etc., etc. The beauty of the capital markets is that, you know, as more flows come in, your market capitalization changes. You know, you look at a Franklin Nevada, for example, started with $2 million or so, and it's now a $36 billion company. And therefore, your, what, 51 or 60%, as it may be, you know, also rises. So it's a fundamental belief, in a sense, in whether the market will capture at any point in time all of this information over the period. And we believe is that something, you look at a situation in which we have been doing this physical for the past, what, 4 centuries or something. And we are saying that the game that is played is in the market. And why do we not capture some of that? The same premise in which we moved Ashanti out to make sure that you can attract capital. And when you look at where we are going as a nation, and you have this gap between our savings and our investment needs, we need to extend beyond bond transactions into now getting a new set of investors who are equity players. You know, now the corollary accumulation of benefits that will come in terms of our stature as the largest gold producers in Africa, what we are doing, even dovetailing it with AFCFTA, you know, it's a bigger vision than that. And in the end, we are talking about 2% of our revenues. This is what this fight is about. But it's not the amount that's important, but the principles must be there. And so the assurance that is transparent, the assurance that we will strike the best price that we can get in the world for it. And that, I think, you have to leave to us. So I accept all of that, and it will help us with our negotiation.
But if you may perhaps say, for the last time, give me my self-sufficient clarity on this question.
Okay.
Because clause 4 of the amended agreement talks about value of rights assigned to Royalty Co.
Yep.
Value of rights assigned to them. And it puts that at $1 billion US.
Okay.
In fact, it puts into bracket the royalty value and quotes. So if Ansa and Co. and the rest of them suggest that, they say, for example, that it is hard to see the basis on which these rights have been valued at US 1 billion, as the agreement clearly states. Who is missing what? about what the value, the valuation is. There's been a valuation of the royalty.
Okay. So there are two, and I tried to state that there are two, in a sense, valuations for the balance sheet to be able to get the assignment from MIF to Ajapa. And then there's a valuation that will go to the market that you and I do not know, nor they know. So the question for them is that, does this nominal value that has been put there as representing what MIF has given to Ajapa wrong, and is it going to cause a certain amount of jeopardy to the listing and the valuation of the listing? And I'm saying no. It will not, because the pricing going to the market is on very different terms than what this is. Do I create a book value essence that is done with IFRS and international auditors? Yes, we have. We've done that. And do we use different maturities because the mine lives are different? Do we use different discounting rates? That also can be done, you know. So with regards to that, I'm like, okay, you know, this is what we believe to be right.
I suppose that what brings this confusion or misunderstanding, maybe one genuine reason you would want to hesitate and pause, because we are talking about evaluation of the royalty.
But Samson,
wait,
no.
Respectfully.
Okay.
We're talking about evaluation of the royalty, and you say we will get to know the value, and that this is nominal. And you had actually, you know, began by saying that we can't possibly know the value before the IPO happens. Now, are we not talking about, like you mentioned, two different things?
Yeah.
Price is different from value. And what value you put on the royalty will affect the determination of the price on the market.
That's not necessarily true.
Okay, help me.
That's not necessarily. So let's say I have a software company, you know, and I go into, so the auditors will say, well, so what are you bringing to the table? Okay, and you have a few equipment, etc., and so that ends up being $1,000. Okay, then I go to the market, and the market determines that these ideas that I have are 100 times multiple of that value. So I'm trying to really make a distinction between presuming, you know, that stated capital or value that is put to create a balance sheet is what it is you go to the market for, and that it is somehow linked in a way in which you then compromise the valuation that we are going to have. And I think that really is a
there must be an empirical basis for that. And the question that is being asked is, how did we arrive at this value?
And that is what
the suggestions coming up is that even if we relied on the 11 mines, you know, the projected production will show that we should have far more. So that's the concern, really. And
you know, I mean, we don't do these things, you know, of the cuff in terms of determining the fair value, as we say, of the financial asset. And so I will have to interrogate, so how many ounces really do they use? And what are the different mine lives that we are talking about? You know, some 4 to 15, etc., etc. I could even add that in future, because we are going to be buying royalties of other companies, that also could be factored in to see what you will get. Then on an accounting basis, the discount rates have an effect on it, okay? So you do something like 7.5% for the operating mines, you do about 10% for the operating mines, and I think we struck they strike a balance of about 8.1% to do that. But for the market valuation, a discount as high as 5% and could be used. And this was all done with IFRS and the auditing firms to really come to something that then is acceptable and for us to go. Right. But the issue that I really want to stress is that this is not going to compromise the way in which we strike the value for at IPO. Okay. In the same way in which Ashanti might have been determined at 480 million and we went at 1.8 million. So we have a history and therefore a comfort to know that yes, we accept that there can be different ways in which one comes to evaluation for the fair market value for the books, and a very different way in which the pricing will be done for going to market.
Okay. Now, I'll read this question from Imani for you, and it's around this issue, and there's a reason I'm staying on this so that by the time we are done, you would have sufficiently, with sufficient, fluorescent clarity, giving us the opportunity, perhaps not to raise that question anymore.
Great.
So they asked the question that the deputy minister, your deputy makes a certain point and his experience is being touted, but to the main question that this is kind of a unique, local invention. And they are asking, have you heard of the Kama mine deal in Burkina Faso involving Sandstorm Gold and Franco-Nevada? Are you aware that $100 million was paid up front? $100 million paid up front for 100,000 ounces of gold to be delivered over 5 years. Now, when you look at these numbers, could you understand the need to perhaps take a relook at this? They are saying that JP Morgan right, I'll take this again. There's a portion I thought I could take away. But he says, okay, so when you look at these numbers, do you understand why one does not need an investment banking certificate from JP Morgan to know that collecting $500 million for roughly 50% of nearly 5% of nearly 5 million ounces of gold per year for an indefinite period of time is a steal for investors? That it demonstrates how we are undervaluing our assets by at least 50%. Did you also examine the Shanta silverback deal in Tanzania?
Samson, it's really difficult to get involved in sort of things that get personalized, and that is hard. The question and motive of intentionality to rip the country of its asset, that one is deeply painful. We have fortunately done this before with Ashanti, where we know that this fair value in the books is very different from what we will get when we get to the market. And would we strike the best bargain for the country? Of course we will strike the best bargain. Okay. When you decide on a certain mode of a transaction, are there certain decisions you make because there are other ancillary benefits that will come to that? We are clear on what the stock market will do as we move from debt into equity. So those all come to make our judgment. But I guess the commitment and pledge, really, for us taking the oath is that we will strike the best deal that can get. Do we believe in this action of participating in the capital markets so that we diversify our sources of wealth generation for the country, we should. And we are committed to that. Would we engage with people to make sure there's more understanding of this transaction? That also we will do it. But as we go to list our company on the London Stock Exchange and the Ghana Stock Exchange, the investors will both be Ghanaian and foreigners, and it brings a new vista to where we are as a people.
Okay, so I would ask this,
you've
and then we can leave that matter at this point.
Okay.
Answer and Co say that what the government reportedly expects to get from the sale of shares in the Jersey company is $5 million at an average gold price of $1,800 an ounce. The government would get more than $400 million in 2021 if it kept its rights to receive all the royalties from the 11 producing mines. There is no reason why, in order to get $500 million now, we should rush into this transaction at the risk of losing substantial future income.
Yeah, I think, I read that, and even as you take majority shares in Ejapa, it means that half of those royalties will be coming to you anyway. So that had to have been put into that case. Now, the question of what you do with an immediate 500 million or more, I mean, we are going to, float up to 49% of that. We have a valuation that we are yet to strike. Where would 500 million be? It could be 20%, it could be 25%, it could be 49%. We don't know. So we can't even begin to say, this is what you get and I'm comparing it to that. Then you ask the question that, are we going to continue using gold or royalties in the consolidated fund as we have done all the time? And what is new? And I'm saying that this asset is traded 500 times more than we do the physical, giving us the potential for capital appreciation, the potential to invite new investors into our territory, the potential to stamp Ghana as the gold haven on the world. And so all of those, as we emerge from where we are into a transformed society, requires that we think differently. We can't continue doing things the same old way and to be timid about the future that beckons us.
I think people have come to appreciate that this is, if you like, a smart way of using our money, royalty money, which is there, in a way where you put it into a vehicle in the manner we are doing in equity transaction, and you have a 51% shares. So as the entity makes profit, invests, you get to benefit. The money is not just sitting there like it is said, it is dumped into the consolidated fund and it vanishes. And we cannot even point to specific projects that we are doing with money from our minerals. We will get to that point where you will demonstrate to us specifically what are the projects that we intend to commit this kinds of money to.
Very well.
But can we answer the question, why can we not do this without recourse to a tax haven? The answer has been that you don't want tax to be taxed because royalty is tax. But the question has been asked. The law itself in section 35 says this is not subject to tax, meaning we could have done it here in Ghana without going to Jersey and wherever.
Great, thank you very much. I mean, the fundamental question then becomes, what is wrong with Jersey? And then you say, how are you maximizing this decision that you want to make? So Jersey is part of the United Kingdom, okay? in which they have determined that in giving certain tax forbearances, it enables companies to be listed, to come there, and also list on the London Stock Exchange. So in terms of transparency and an ability to see what they are doing, that is not something that we worry about. Registering the company in Jersey, enabling us for the investor to feel comfortable with the jurisdiction and therefore invest, it's important. So you look at all of the various companies like Wheaton, Franco-Nevada, etc., even the Norwegian fund listed in Luxembourg and the Cayman Islands, etc., so that they take advantage of investor comfort to do that. So you ask yourself, what is it that we are being so much more Catholic than the Pope? When we look at international transactions and the best way to get value, and it is not illegal, you say, well,
So that should have been the original government's response to the question, why go to Jersey, a tax haven, and as we know, and like your deputy will say, tax havens are reputed for dodgy activities. Rather than pointing us to Section 35 of the law, which says the minimum income paid to the fund and the dividend payable by the fund or a special purpose vehicle are not taxable, which meant we could easily do it here and we will not have been taxed.
Okay.
So to suggest that we went to Jersey so that we will not attract tax upon the tax money was not the right answer to have given to have been given to us in the first place, correct?
Well, maybe that's why I'm here.
Okay.
But really to demystify, these things, understand that the peer companies do likewise, is the way in which investor comfort is assumed, and we take advantage. Something, I guess, my constant dilemma as I sit in this chair is, how do I get the best value for the Republic?
Right.
And as we verge into this idea of Ghana becoming an international financial services center, what are the pillars that I need to begin to put in place to ensure that this is realized, that the new El Dorado comes into play? But the assurance that we'll get the best value, it will be transparent. I mean, once this company is public, the issue of governance and reporting is just so internationally clear that nobody can perceive that something untoward will be going on.
Yeah, and there's, in relation to this question, the question is being asked, in seeking to do it in the manner we are doing it, there's a suggestion that is why we are giving up so much control when we could have retained control in the relationship. And the question that is being asked is that there is also the opportunity for sovereign controlled commercial companies to have an option to list on the London Stock Exchange and to keep the state control without losing it. So why have we left all these options? And you would see that when you went to Cabinet, I mean yourself, when you went to Cabinet to seek approval for the amendments that had to be introduced in 2020 this year, you wanted to take away the other controls that the Financial Act and then the SIGA, the government state-owned companies have over such a venture.
Yeah, I think the issue, in all things is control and value, and whether in our judgment, giving up 1% share or giving up a certain clause would inure to the benefit of the company in the long run. And we are confident that that is the way to go. And so that really is a judgment call of value and the future flexibility of the entity. And I think we are comfortable with those changes that we have made. You know, I think it's quite, after a certain point, to be able to look at the margins of the transaction and say, well, I'll go this way, you will go that way. That's fine. But in terms of whether in total we believe that the package that we are putting together will serve the Republic much better. I think that's where we are at.
But don't you think in that process of divesting so much control, it feeds into the suspicions that the CSOs and others have had? When you went to seek approval, basically what you were doing was to limit the application of the controlling legislation by removing the rigorous controls by way of financial accountability, because if you had not done that amendment, there was supposed to be some financial accountability to the state directly, and good governance checks, which the state enterprises body was supposed to oversee, financial reporting and openness to the government. You sought to remove, you know, the compulsion to make disclosures, including the remuneration of top management. You sought also to remove the criminal liability for non-compliance with the PMF Act and then the SIGA Act, which could have seen, you know, officers or directors of the company suffer as much as 6 to 2 years in prison if they didn't do the things that the minister required them to do, among others. So people feel all these controls that you have taken away, which the state would have had, feeds to the suspicions that the CSOs raise.
Yeah. And what is the suspicion? And I have also a certain clarity on the governance standards of the London Stock Exchange, which has enabled these companies to rise from 2 million to 38 billion. I also have that. And I'm evaluating that with whether really I'm losing so much by removing those. And I feel that the tenets that these companies operate on, the LSC, etc., will give us enough protection. And also having the chair and the type of board members that we'll have will do that.
These controls and monitoring that the authority, that the State Interest and Governance Accountability Authority would have had, including monitoring the processes and actually direct reporting of their finances to you as the finance minister, are seen to be a better way of accountability. And we have taken it away.
Yeah, but I mean, once you know, we also make laws thinking of state enterprises being 100% owned. It gives certain restrictions. Am I compromising our ability to be able to get the type of reporting that we need? No, we are not. And I assure the people of Ghana that we'll get all the information we need to be able to make our decisions and also get the type of value we require and the reason for going to the market.
Okay. So you sought this approach by informing Cabinet that there was an urgent need to get money into for development. What are we looking at in terms of development through this vehicle?
Yeah, Samson, what we are envisioning is that we're going to create the largest sort of royalty company in Africa. And so we'll put about 1/5 of the money aside in the quest for acquisition of other royalties as we build up this company. And you can see how $2 million can become 38 billion in a matter of time if managed properly. And that's amazing resources for that. So we'll put that type of money away as we look for that. The second aspect is that you look at the whole value chain of gold, and Ghana does not really participate in that much. First of all, we don't even have an international standard refinery for all the gold that we have mined. And so that we need to invest in and to make sure that once the Ghana stamp is on bullion, it is accepted internationally. The whole tourism, education, mining communities investment has not been done well. I mean, it is quite tragic when you look at Takwa and Obuasi, given the same rules, how far we have come or how far we have not come. So there will be investments in that place. How is it that, being such leaders in cocoa and gold, you cannot, you and I, Samson, name 2 or 3 millionaires in this area? Let's find a way in which there's dedicated resources so that we can support, miners in Ghana. The difference between us and South Africa is that the South Africans own those places, and we have other companies doing that. That needs to be reversed, but that needs deliberateness, and these resources will help. Then, of course, when the president sent me to Parliament for the mid-year, as you know, we announced Obatampa, which is a 100 billion enterprise that we have on our books, a quarter of our GDP, of which 70% will be private sector and 30% will be that. So the issue of supporting the construction of the district hospitals, and then here the president has also said that this will be done by Ghanaian contractors, because he's thinking through this whole anemic response to housing and saying, how do we build our contractors so that from there we segue into a national mass housing construction plan? And I think that is necessary. A third element is the whole financial chassis. And so the creating of a national development bank, which will be a wholesale bank, so that we can then invest in our venture capital, in our Exim banks, in our Ghanaian banks, to build this regional hub that we have committed to. So it becomes, pushing ourselves beyond, what you say, the poverty of ambition, to realize that this transformation, once God willing, the president is given 4 more years, we take off running.
Are we not capable of listing, itemizing the specific development projects with clear timelines tied to the revenue, the money that is coming from this enterprise, so that will be your social contract? So we can hold you to it.
I think if you were to deconstruct what I just said, first 20% for royalty acquisitions, around and to build this enterprise. Second, the value chain of gold, which means that what money are you putting in to build this world-class refinery, etc., and what do we do for our indigenous communities? Third, I talked about the hospitals and home construction and support for the National Development Bank. So those can be spelled out for you.
The 20% that you say is already there, untouched. The 20% of the royalties, correct?
Right, that in terms of the development fund.
So it is not all the monies, royalty money that is going on. But questions are being raised as to that particular percentage. Has it in fact been available for the purposes?
The 20% development fund.
Yes.
I think it's been a bit quite not been exacting, and our expectation is that now with MIF, will be a lot more specific and transparent and accountable for that. But that specifically was not touched, to make sure that we keep it.
I'll pick a few questions for you from Twitter. Ephraim Roberts says that, kindly ask the Minister of Finance why they are hiding the prospectus of this deal and the name of shortlisted companies where Kofi was finally selected. What modus was used in the selection process?
Yeah. You know, we use an international search firm for that, and Kofi, if you look at his CV, you know, is of an international level in terms of the experiences he had and also what he has been able to do at SNET. So that it's always a problem when a relative or something or somebody in high places gets a position, but whether that person should also be denied is another issue. So but we are very comfortable with his competence.
That question has been asked by two different people.
I'm sure. I think the fundamental question, Samson.
I'll move on and ask this question.
Is why should the finance minister be related to the president? That can also be asked. You know, let's get to the heart of that, and then say that was that a good call?
Right. In respect of that, if you wanted to have that question restated.
No, I want us to move on.
I get it. I get it. Because the NDC has a way of asking that question. And I don't know if you would like to respond to the way they ask that question.
I think really, you know, the issue of transparency, the valuation, the tax haven, you know, all of those needly things that people need to do. I pray that we have done justice to those.
Kweku Boisiako asked, can you publish a 30-year cash flow projections based on the Ejapa model, juxtaposed side by side with our inflows from the royalties under the current arrangement over the same 30-year period? And 30 years will be the life of a mining lease. And you know, this lasts for the life of a mining lease and even when it is renewed. And he says, I believe this discussion is about maximizing the overall financial and socio-economic benefits that Ghana should derive from our mineral resources. It's a numbers game. So let's publish the numbers and let Ghanaians interrogate the numbers using whatever models or alternatives they have, so we can cut out the suspicions and personal attacks and rather focus on the real issues. What will you say to him?
I think that's welcome. It's nothing that we cannot or should not do, and really in the end, after 3, 4, 5 years, it's all projections as to what you think the mine life is and what the operating companies.
So do you want to do this?
Well, we can. I can go through the 12 operating mines, do your guesstimate for the 4 developing mines, and see where you are going to. You know, the issue... And
this has been the cry, so the publication, when would you like to do this?
So we can do that. I can get my guys to start on it, you know.
So we can expect this to be done?
Yeah, we can.
Right.
You know, because but the challenge, you know, with all of us is, you know, how do you do the valuation for where this, the price of this company will be on the stock market over the 30 years?
The Clarion call has been paused.
Okay.
Are you going to pause?
No, we're not. I think this is a good transaction. I think that the issues that have been raised, we have put light on that. You know, this is an incredible opportunity, the highest gold prices in the world. And it just reminds you of one of these parables in the Bible where the Lord has given us these assets, and there are 5 of us, and I'm choosing to bury it at this time of the world because of certain questions. You know, leadership is about, you know, balancing this, but in the end, do I believe this is good for the Republic? I firmly do. Okay. Will it lead to where we want to go as a Akufo-Addo's plan for where Ghana should be transformed? I firmly do. Have we been doing what we are doing since the 15th century? And this is where we are at. We all are clear about that. You know, should this continue to go into the consolidated fund and then not be able to know what we've done with it? That is not the way of the future.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. So I have been engaging the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, explaining who Ejapa is and who Ejapa is not. at least he's taking time to exhaust explanations on 3 of the 20 issues that have come up as far as this deal is concerned. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Samson. I think really, thank you for the platform. I think we've gotten to a point in our country where I believe Ghana is an ideal, and that bucks the trend and puts the Black Star where it should be. The issue of poverty of ambition, should be cut out of that. Should the next election over national interest? Should it be polls over principle? These are thorny issues, but really as a country and where we want to go, we can't do any less than this. So I appreciate your
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And as always, Newsfile is brought to you by Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner. MTN everywhere you go. Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Consolidated Bank Ghana, we stand with you. Duraflux, where Duraflux goes, water flows. We lead, we build home for you. Star Assurance, your solid partner. And Rehoboth Properties. We'll be right back with my next set of guests to continue this discussion, hoping that sufficient light has been thrown on 3 of the major issues regarding it. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile, it's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. And we just had our first segment with the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, explaining some of the thorny issues that have come up as far as the Ejapa royalties deal is concerned. Now, let's engage with Dr. Tony Obing, founder and president, Africa Institute of Extractive Industries, AIEI. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Also joining us via Zoom is Dr. Theo Echampong, economist and political risk analyst. Doc, thank you for making the time. Eduji Tamaklo, Kujo Tameklo is lawyer and member, NDC National Communications and Legal Team. Thanks for making the time.
Thanks, Samson.
And Dr. Steve Manteau is Chairman Alliance of CSOs working on the extractive, anti-corruption, and good governance. Do we have Steve Manteau on Zoom? Okay, hopefully he joins us in good time. So let me begin with Theo Echampong. And you also wrote an article in which you conclude by, appealing to the minister or the government to, as it were, pause on this deal. You have heard the minister. What do you say?
Yeah, good morning once again, and it's always a privilege to be on your platform. I must thank the minister for actually making time to explain some of the thorny issues around the deal. So in the piece that I wrote earlier on within the week, the only reason why I was calling for a pause, that I thought that there were some issues that needed a little bit more clarity, given that some of the other stakeholders, including the civil society organizations, had raised them and answers were not forthcoming. And these were issues around the evaluation, and I'll come to that in a second, the issue around like the governance and the transparency provisions, and then the bigger issue of what I call what we want to do with the mining sector, the bigger transformation agenda. So it was quite good listening to the finance minister a few moments ago as he went through explaining some of the issues that people had raised. But I still think there are some outstanding bits that need to be further interrogated. So basically the purpose for writing that piece was to ask for a pause, to bring more of the stakeholders to the table to discuss them, but also to offer an opportunity to ask what we really want to do with the transformation agenda in the mining sector. And if I can quickly just touch on a bit on the valuation, which I think the minister spent a lot of time also explaining. So the fundamental issue is two things. What you would classify as the book value, which you went at length to explain, and then what is the net asset value? On top of that, you add like the premium or the multiple that you get when you do the valuation. The confusion had been the assignment, if you read the agreement, the section 4.1 of the royalty value, how they couched it as meaning the value of all the future cash flow streams of the respective mines in question. But it wasn't very clear in the agreement that the net asset value is actually different from like the book value. So if we accept that there can be different approaches of calculating the book value, granted, the real question now is what is the underlying net asset value of all the mines that we've got in question, based on which you now go to the market to do an IPO and you get like a multiple on top of that when you benchmark it to Franco-Nevada or other kind of streaming companies in there. This is where I think we need to get a bit more further clarity on, to get an idea of then the guidance that you would want. So you don't want to go to the market, and although we know the market will determine the price, you don't want to go to the market and get something less, So we need to know what we are selling in this new entity or company that we have created, and by offloading 49 or whatever percentage of that. And remember that the value that we're getting, that 500 million, could actually change. So the shareholding can change. It won't necessarily be 49%. You could get 500 million, and based on the value you placed on it, and my own calculation looks for 500 million, we could actually get probably around 20 to 25% of the offload, 20 to 25% of the shareholding. So it really comes down fundamentally to what the net asset value of those assets are. And then on top of that, what the multiple of that will be, as the finance minister explained. And that would lead to bed a lot of the lingering questions or issues that civil society and other organizations raised.
Dr. Theo Champon, do I understand you to say that, having listened to the minister, you have revised your call on the government to pause, and that it's okay to proceed?
No, it's not necessarily okay to proceed. I think we need more detail. And in the last segment where you read the Twitter statement, the commenter that actually made the point that I'm trying to raise here, that we need to have more detail on the projections of production from those leases over like the next 30 years.
Right.
And I consider that all you need really is that the first 3 years projection is really the most important. Any other thing beyond that is just a projection. But we need that and some assumptions about gold price, etc., to get an idea of what the fundamental net asset value in question is.
Right.
If that is provided, and I think the minister has said he's going to get his people to work on that, it would then add a lot more clarity. But the idea, the impression I got from the minister really is that they're going to go ahead with this regardless. So whatever concerns that civil society or other well-meaning individuals have raised practically would, amount to nothing, to use that word advisedly. But it's quite clear that the government is keen on going this direction.
His suggestion is that they are front-loading, all the information that is required, so people will get the information that they need. And you are applauding his response and commitment to publishing a 30-year cash flow.
Yeah, I mean, that's very well what we need. And I must commend the minister for actually, being open about that. It's a dicey one because, again, when you're going to the market, some of these things would count as forward-looking statements, and often you would capture them in the prospectus itself, which would give you an idea of the projections. But even if that wouldn't be made fully available, at least it could still go back to Parliament, who are the sovereign representatives of the people, and that would be kind of a middle-of-the-road approach. But regardless, we need to have an idea of what the net asset value of the mines or the minerals in question is. The idea of listing it and profiting from the upside, based on the multiples, that's not in question for anybody who sort of understands some of these issues.
Right.
The question really is, what are we selling first to the market based on which you expect to, drive or increase the value based on the value of gold prices? And that's where I think, given what the minister said a few moments ago, we must welcome that and wait for those projections to come forward.
What do you make of his response to what many of you have sort of objected to the near lack of control, so to speak, by the state? And you are associated with Imani as well. Imani has suggested that government has given up so much control. By way of my summary, I will show you that the amendment that was done recently to remove the application of the Public Financial Management Act and its regulations, as well as the monitoring and control of the Public Interest and Governance Authority over the SPV, are basically, one, to limit the application of the controlling legislation by removing what you find in these laws as rigorous control by way of financial accountability, good governance checks, because the SIGA will be monitoring them, financial reporting and openness to government. It virtually has also removed the compulsion for disclosures, including the remuneration of the top management of the SPV. It also removes the criminal liability that would have applied for non-compliance with these, legislations in terms of the disclosures and what the law requires. A director could go to prison for 6 to 2 years if they fail to do those things that are required and reported as was required. It has also, by this amendment, removed the regime of what I call the name and shame by the publication in the media of names of violating key officers. If you are an officer of the entity and you were, as it were, not complying with the reporting and disclosure requirements of the law, the law requires that your name could be published in the media for violating the law. And also, it has removed the monitoring by the state's interest and governance, authority entity. Imani's suggestion is that you could keep all of this. You are doing this so that you say you are doing this to list on the London Stock Exchange. Meanwhile, on the London Stock Exchange, they have provided an avenue where the exchange has introduced a sovereign-controlled commercial company option so that the state-owned entities and joint ventures can be listed without their nation state owners losing all control over decision-making. What do you say to his response to this approach? He says what they did is the best.
Yeah, so there are the policy issues which Imani raises, and then there are also the practicalities kind of on the ground. And let me explain that. Basically, you have created an entity that is listed in another jurisdiction. So legally speaking, it's the laws of those jurisdictions, and the lawyers can correct me, that would be applicable for the entity in question here, regardless of who is the majority or minority shareholder.
The relationship agreement says so. It's English law that will govern the relationship.
Exactly. So it then comes to a question of, do the English laws and the provisions within those laws address the concerns around like governance, around ownership, around hiring and firing, all those nitty-gritty issues? To a large extent, they do. But that doesn't preclude the fact that by going this route of, Jesse via the listing, you've also given away some of like the sovereign right. But it's a trade-off, and it's a policy or economic trade-off that needs to be made. The question for me, and the question I think probably we need clarity is, why did they decide, as in the government, to go this route when there were or are other alternatives? And I've heard arguments being made around like the tax issues, in the sense that if you were to list like, or register the company in mainland UK, then you may end up having to pay capital gains or other taxes. So by going the Jesse route, you can avoid that. The complication in there really comes with the extra 49% shareholders, right? So nothing at the moment precludes anyone from creating 10 or 15 shell companies to own or take, shares in those entities. And you then have to go beyond, the entities to now find out who the true or actual beneficial shareholders are. That's one that has not, as far as I'm concerned, been addressed. But the question of the Ghana governance regime, working SIGA, PFM, etc., as far as this dealing is concerned, and as far as the option that the government has chosen to utilize, it will only matter for the 51% that the state still controls in that entity. That is what it will matter. The other 49%, it won't matter so much. And the wider group or the SPV itself would now be subject to the laws of England and whatever applicable transparency disclosures that need to be made. And, by listing on the LSE, there are also disclosure protocols. There are things that the entities have to go through, annual report, quarterly report, etc., etc. And what then also becomes important then will be the 51% shareholders. The entity in question, the Ghanaian version, would also have to report regularly to the Minister of Finance and the shareholders. So I should be able to go on their website and download the quarterly reports, be able to find out like the share price, the dividend policy, all of those things. I think those issues will be resolved. So I don't really have a fundamental disagreement on that. And
I was actually going to refer you to the law itself for the MIF, Section 36 on good corporate governance. And it says actually that transparency as a fundamental principle. And it says the management of the fund shall be exercised taking into account the overall considerations that minerals income constitute proceeds from the exploitation of non-renewable natural resources, and the overall objective that mineral income and minerals investment income is to be managed for the benefit of the current and future generations of the Republic. The management of and duties associated with the fund shall be carried out in accordance with the highest internationally accepted standards of transparency and good governance. Then it lists several other measures that should ensure this. The question really is very beautiful in the books, but will that happen? Now, let me get to Tony Obing. What would you say, having listened to the minister on the question of openness, consultation, and also the valuation question and the purpose really of EJAPA?
All right, thanks, Samson, and thank you for having me on your platform. I as you rightly indicated in your introduction, gold, and minerals generally tend to excite our emotions and emotiveness because we believe that gold is really part of our soul as a nation. So anything that you do without gold as a nation would normally attract some public interest, public effort to understand really why you are doing what with our gold. And I think that the perception and political economic issues were not addressed properly. And here I'm talking about an economic policy or action that actually has taken away the political side, the perception side. And you know, perceptions are realities if you don't do anything to change that. Now, I was happy that now he admitted to some dearth of consultation, some lack of engagement, which would have made all these things unnecessary if they had been done earlier. And something, I mean, imagine that in multimedia, you had everybody, or maybe about 10% or 40% of people called let's say, Ladiayeneni, John Ladiayeneni, Isaac Ladiayeneni over here. Even though multimedia is a private entity, the perception is that why is it that it's only Ladiayenenis who are working over here? So naturally, people will question why maybe in the structure of this deal, you will have some people who are associated with a particular section. These are perception issues. I mean, it doesn't matter whether these people are the best in the world. It doesn't matter these people are the only people you could find, in Ghana. You would still have to deal with that perception. You have to explain. And I think the minister tried to admit that they did not do well in that area. What I thought fell short of his discussion was the fact that, yes, we think that there are issues, we think that there are structural issues, we think there are perception issues, yet we are not going to do anything. We'll go ahead with that. I think that defeats the whole purpose of this discussion. He admits, and he in fact throws more light on issues that hitherto appear to be very opaque. Nevertheless, he says we are not going to do anything about that. We will still go ahead. We'll throw the information out. I think that is an area that he needs to really look at very carefully, so that Ghanaians will get a bit more involvement in that because of the nature of our gold. I don't think that, Samson, these NGOs and even the opposition political parties would have come out with all these concerns if, I mean, they did so because they did not like a particular government, or they did not like what is going to happen to this country if the benefit was quite clear. I think it was for the interest of this country that you have all these NGOs coming together to say that there are issues that we need to sit down and address. I haven't heard anyone say that we should not try and maximize the benefit from our royalties. In fact, something as far back as 2013, if you Google, when I was with the Chamber of Mines, we came up with this idea that we should try and form this mining revenue fund, and that should be invested. If you Google, you'll find, I think it was May 2nd, May 2013. And for the same thing, that we would not have to lump all the receipts from the royalties into a consolidated fund. It doesn't give us more. So investing that would be beneficial. And I believe that the previous government had tried something in that direction. So nobody is against getting more for the country. What people have raised concern about is the approach, the involvement of people, the questions of valuation, the maximization of benefit to Ghanaians. So these are areas that I don't think by being indicating that yes, we are going to do it, we're going to, we have listened to you, we are meeting with NGOs, we'll just solve it. You know, I think we need to sit down and then typically address all the sticky issues of valuation, reasonings behind, 1 billion benefit to Ghana, and then mortgaging these royalties, which technically depends on the price. If the price goes up, Ghana is likely to get more, and if Ghana gets more, what's the implication on that? So I believe the minister did well.
If Ghana gets more, the implication is that we benefit, so we get to do the development we want.
Well, but that should be made clear. You need to.
Is that not clear that you are a 51% shareholder in the entity?
Yes.
It's not a loan; it's an equity transaction.
Yes, but it should be made clear what we're going to do with the extra revenue that accrues to Ghana. It must be transparent. These are things that, I mean, we have this extractive industries transparency initiative that insists on transparency. So you want to indicate clearly that once we receive the receipts, and I heard him, and I think it was good, I heard him say that we're going to go to the mining sectors, the mining areas to develop, because honestly, one of the characteristic features of mining areas is the lack of infrastructure. The kind of the figure.
So have you heard? If you have followed, they have said that mining infrastructure, I think there's some 10% somewhere that is going to be used for these purposes. The Deputy Minister have explained all of these. So at least, are we not able to admit that for the first time, we are not going to have our mineral royalties coming, dump in the consolidated fund, and they vanish? As in, they get diluted, we don't know what exactly they are used for. But now, they have been segregated, and they are going to be watched. And in addition to that, we don't just take the money and use it. We are going to take the money and try to multiply, invest the money. What else could we be asking for?
Look, as I've said, no one is against the efforts by any government to try and multiply or even quadruplicate the benefit from the receipt of royalties. There's no doubt about that. I think the concern has been whether is receiving the maximum value for the receipt from our royalties. Whether we have adopted an approach that is transparent enough, because everybody's interested. If it was maybe Tony Obin Company Limited, nobody cares. It's me. If I invest and I get higher returns, that's fine. But it's for Ghana. It's a country, and so people are going to be interested. The citizens are going to be interested in what is it likely that we're going to get. And I've heard people asking rather correctly for the cash flow, the projected cash flows, which will indicate to us that, look, once we have done this, these are the likely returns that we're going to get. And then we have clear earmarked areas where these resources, the extra resources that will come, will go into.
Yeah, so we are being told about all of these. So tell me, what is your level of satisfaction with this whole process? And what is your level of dissatisfaction? In percentage terms, 100%.
Yes, I am well. Let me explain my level of, before I bring you the percentage. It was difficult to give a percentage. My level of satisfaction is the fact that we are not going to throw all the receipt, the mineral royalty receipt, into consolidated fund. We get much less from it. So the idea that we are going to find a way to get more is very good. It's very, very satisfying. And of course, the fact that the perception issues, which have been, because they are very important. You know, when you are managing an economy, when you're managing people, you want to be sure that you go along with them. Now, the minister admits that there were some perception deficit, consultation deficit, engagement deficit. So they are going to address that. So they constitute my satisfaction. So I'll give it maybe 47% or something. And then the remaining 63, we need to resolve. We need to resolve that.
Okay. Godwin.
Senior. Yes.
You listened to the minister.
Yes.
And the questions of transparency, openness, reverse what has been said to be opaque. His response, the question of valuation, the questions of losing control. What do you say to the explanations he has given?
Yes, something. I think it's important that this point is made, that in the passage of the Mineral Income Investment Fund, that's Act 978, the NDC minority, there was a certain unanimity in the passage.
Okay.
Because we believe in principle, the question of maximizing the benefits accruing to the state from our mineral income and the associated taxes and royalties. Now, listening to the minister, and like I usually do, a person who is conflicted, I don't usually give any weight to what he says. Because our Minister of Finance, and what he failed to disclose on this panel, is that a company that he has beneficial interest in, Databank, is directly involved in this transaction. Now, when you have a situation where...
that information is from where?
No. I mean, take all the documentations.
Which of them? If you can point me to a specific documentation where Databank is named as being part of this transaction, as what? As what, consultants, or what are they?
Several transaction advisors had been recruited for this transaction. Minister Ken Ofori-Atta had spoken. In fact, on Peace FM, he himself admitted that a company that he has interest, which is Databank, is involved, except to say that the selection of Databank was done on merit. So it is an admitted fact. There's no point believing.
Okay.
And so the point I'm making
because I didn't have the opportunity of listening to
No, I mean this.
Yes, I just wanted
your platform. Your platform is a very credible platform.
Okay, go ahead.
And it can be fast-checked easily. He made a point clearly that as far as he is concerned, the selection of Databank was done on merit. And I'm saying that once someone's financial interests are involved in a transaction, his defense cannot be deemed to be one motivated by the national interest, especially when he has a proprietary interest. And you and I, if we appear before a judge, and the judge has a scintilla of interest in the matter you and I are involved in, the first thing that we'll do is that we'll ask him to recuse himself. That's an admitted fact. And so when you have our Minister of Finance having his company or a company that he has beneficial interest involved in a transaction of this nature, the defense he puts forward, I will not even buy it for anything. He is conflicted. And it's important that he discloses the nature of his interest before we even proceed with this transaction. And look, Senior, you will note that this was the executive approval.
This is something you are introducing, which is not something he responded to here. You are
no. I'm saying that all of the responses that he had been given or he had given today, if you discount the nature of his interests in this whole transaction, you put less weight on what he has said. And I'm saying that, look, if you look at the executive approval given to this transaction on the 24th day of March 2020 with reference number OPS 182 volume 9 2020 and signed by no other person by Nana Asante Bediatu, Secretary to the President, you will notice that even when the request was made to give presidential blessings to enable the amendment to the Act 978, what we have all not asked ourselves, and the minister did not address, is that at the time Parliament passed this particular, amendment, the amendment was supposed to be the basis, the legal authorization in order to operationalize all of these agreements that we have. Even before President Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo will give presidential assent to the amendment that will provide the legal backing to operationalize all of these special purpose vehicles we are talking about. The transaction had already happened. And you and I, if we are given the opportunity in court to say that we have operationalized a transaction and the law that will allow you to do that had not even come to place, the first thing that you raise will be the authority of Mark 4 and USC and tell me that you cannot put something on nothing and expect it to stand. The point I'm making is that if you look at this particular transaction, the indecent haste with which all of this thing was put together, and the obvious lack of transparency, the obvious cases of conflict of interest, persons directly associated with our president, all involved in putting up this transaction together, and the legal opinion proffered by the learned Attorney General 22nd July and the 12th of August, when you put all of this thing together, the position the minority and the NDC has taken, that this transaction ought to be cancelled immediately still stands. And today, lo and behold,
it ought to be cancelled because of what?
First of all, like he said, matters involving royalties, minerals, comes with its own associated emotional and sentimental issues. And so, in seeking how to use them, you need what is called broader consultation. The minister admits that that was not done. 2, you are aware that the CSOs, in their initial and preliminary commentary, came to the conclusion that when you put all of these things together, what you see is what is called elite capture. The position advanced by the CSO is a position that quite clearly, when you put all of these individuals, and look,
are you aware the person who used the expression elite capture has withdrawn that?
No, he has not. Yeah. In fact, what he said, subsequent interview, which is Steve Mantia, was to say that in a different interview, he was asked these two parties, which one, blah, 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 blah. And he said, no, the 2020 election is going to be a thief and arm robber. That is what he has withdrawn. The question of this whole transaction demonstrating elite capture still stands. And in fact, it was a position advanced by not less than 15 CSOs. But you see, Sina, just 1 minute so that I can. Look, if you pick the Attorney General's legal opinion, on the 12th of August, I think I have it here. I want to just read something. And I saw the last time there was this one, the 12th August opinion. All the issues raised, principally in the 22nd July matters. Do you know that the final agreement that was passed by Parliament, most of them were maintained?
Can you show us?
For example, if you pick the question of the entire agreement appear not to have a terminal duration, it still stands. It has not been changed. If you and I, we are consulted to draft an agreement, and the agreement basically runs in perpetuity, the first thing that you say is that no, this agreement has a problem. And when you are dealing with mineral royalties that goes directly to people, you should be a bit more cautious. Even more important, Senior, I've heard this conversation.
I have heard this kind of debate, and I think the useful thing to do is that you hold the agreement and point to what the Attorney General said, redraft, and show how it has not been redrafted. Point to what the Attorney General says, remove, and show where it has not been removed. But when you make a general
it's not a general statement.
That there are things that the Attorney General asked that are still in the final document. Without showing, I think we cannot do that on this desk.
No. The agreement itself is 140 pages. So to expect me to carry 140-page document here would be grossly unfair. In fact, when the minister came here and spoke, he never showed it. But I'm not even... The point I'm making to you... Samson, permit me to answer your question.
You are referring to
you want your platform. Agreement. I am saying that, for
instance... You are referring to the amended agreement, not so.
You wait, Samson.
Let's do it this
22nd July, this is it.
You are referring to the amended agreement.
Fantastic.
Great. I have a copy here. So point to what the Attorney General said. The 7 things that she says were outstanding before the agreement hit Parliament. She wrote on the 12th, and on the 13th, the agreement got to Parliament. So can you point out that any of the 7 things she says were outstanding?
Now, and then, can I proceed?
And then we can go to the document. I have it here.
At page 2.
Page 2 of which?
Of the 22nd July letter.
22nd July. Of
the Attorney General's opinion.
Okay.
Are you there?
You go ahead.
This is what the Attorney General says. Further, it is noted that the terms and conditions of the agreement are very onerous.
That's paragraph 3.
That is so. Point 4. The provisions are skewed against the interests of the fund and the Republic. Both the fund and the Republic have strict obligations and liabilities with punitive consequences. In in the event of a breach or default, whilst the other contracting parties, namely Royal Co, Litco, are to use their best efforts to ensure the execution
of the transaction.
Then you proceed. The agreement ran in perpetuity and therefore has no face term. Is it there?
Go ahead.
In the agreement as passed by Parliament, tell me the face term. You have it. Tell me the fixed term of the agreement.
In the agreement,
government communicators have indicated that the agreement is for 15 years. That's incorrect. Because the nature of the agreement and how it is structured, a renewal of the mining lease, the agreement continues without renewal. And so, the explanation offered is that no, let's allow it to run. But it was not changed in the agreement passed by the Parliament of the Republic of Ghana. Because the agreement is coterminous with the mining leases, so renewed. That's a fact.
This is what you have in the agreement. Section 2.1, effective date. The provisions of this agreement shall only commence when the last of the following conditions has been satisfied. Okay, is that what? The term, section 2.2. This agreement and any assignment and allocation of gold mineral royalties under it shall terminate on the date on which the last of the allocated mining leases has expired or has been terminated without any further extension or renewal. Such period, the term, the Republic may, in its sole discretion, extend the term of this agreement.
So what's the point? So what's the point? I am saying that it is this particular thing
so now
that the learned Attorney General said.
Read the Attorney General's 12 August advice.
I have it here as well.
Yes, 12 August advice.
This is it.
Yes.
Do you have the same thing?
Yeah, I have 12 August advice. Yes.
So the Attorney General then proceeds to say that we have reviewed the latest letter under reference and submitted, and note our comments have been incorporated and changes effected to the except. And then the Attorney General
provides does not include this.
No, the point I'm making is that, and I have listened to the persons who advised the Republic on this, and they say that they did not change because they provided an explanation why it ought to be maintained. It is not because they changed it. Okay. So we need to be clear. Remember that Gabi...
what is wrong with that? If you are giving legal advice, you and I are in practice.
Yes.
You give advice on things that you don't have expertise in.
Please. I think that is demeaning. But demeaning.
You know the law.
No, with the greatest respect.
I'm not referring to you. I'm talking about...
No. The point I'm saying is that
let me ask you the question.
Our Attorney General provides a legal opinion. You are not the first person who is making that point. I have listened to key government spokespersons say that the Attorney General, as at the time she proffered the 22nd July, did not understand the nature of the transaction. I mean, what in God's name will cause you to make that statement? Because you see, at the Attorney General Department, there are persons with varied expertise.
Exactly.
And so when they put an opinion together, it is not an opinion of one person hiding in a corner. So the suggestion that the opinion coming from them is coming from a person who has a demonstrable lack of knowledge of the transaction. It's not helpful. Let's not entertain it.
Don't you go to court?
Let's not entertain it.
Can we not have a... Don't you go to court on a matter that you have a solid case, not on the basis of your expertise in that area, but you have listened to experts and framed the case properly for them? Don't you do that?
Well, Senior, here is the question.
Don't you do that?
There's no evidence here that the time the respected Attorney General put this opinion together, she had a certain demonstrable lack of knowledge in the transaction.
The Attorney General now tells you on the 12th.
And her conclusion is that we have no further comment.
Now listen.
This is her conclusion.
She says that we have reviewed the latest letter under reference and the submitted draft agreements, and note that our comments have been incorporated and changes effected to the draft agreement except the following. And in the following, she doesn't tell you that she has an issue with the term.
And I have told you that this transaction, the likes of Gabi have spoken to it, other persons have communicated relative to it. I have listened to the chairman of MIS, I've listened to a member of the finance committee, Andre Japamesa. Several persons have spoken to this transaction. So it is not as though this is one-line communication relative to this transaction. But even the same opinion that you are, reading, the last portion, very instructive. We have no further comment on the draft agreement. The agreement may therefore be executed subject to the above comment. As you speak, as the host of Newsfar, are you aware that at the time the representatives of our people finally passed this on the 14th, all these matters were incorporated?
All which matters? The
matters, even the outstanding matter that she says that her whatever it is subject to, has it been incorporated?
If your question is to me, I have read the final agreement, and I can't see that they have not been incorporated. That's why I say I'm better off if you can point me to specifically where in the agreement something has not been done.
Samson,
yeah.
I gave you a classic example, even the one involving the duration. You are saying that it is still there. Have you seen the original agreement? The same provision. All they did was to provide an explanation why they had to.
Did she say here that they should change that term? Is it not the latest?
No,
is it not the latest
I think that Samson,
or the
principal legal advisor to the Republic had the benefit of looking at an agreement. And in her opinion, the agreement runs in perpetuity. Okay. And this is what she said. But just to make this point, Samson, all of these matters we are having a discussion about goes to the very question of the sovereignty of this republic. Like I told you, matters that involve mineral royalties are very germane. In some jurisdictions, matters involving how minerals and others are distributed have become the source of conflict. The Niger Delta incidents, among all other things. As we speak, the minister made a point that, look, under the myth, you are supposed to have the Mineral Income Development Fund. The fund is supposed to allocate 20% to communities affected directly by mining. Question, has that been done? So that if today there is a conversation national that 75.6% of our overall royalties are going to be given to an entity, and that entity is going to give further to another entity, and government of Ghana will be retaining a certain percentage, and the people do not even know as we speak what is the actual value of this particular transaction that we are talking about. First question, what informed the representatives of our people, that is Parliament, the majority, in this case, let the point be made clear that the minority stage a walkout. So the MPP majority, what informed their decision to pass it? Something you and I know, and I'm never opposed to using resources either for collateral or what have you. Because when President Kufuor decided to build Bui Dam, he used part of our cocoa proceeds to do that. When we decided to build a gas infrastructure in the Trouble, we used part of our oil proceeds. Today, as we speak, can we tell, you are a very respected journalist, can you tell us what exactly are we going to use the front load $500 million to do? Can you tell me?
It's a question of whether you believe or trust what the government is saying.
When Parliament passed the agreement, Parliament and the agreement, you have it. When they went, the relationship, the indemnity clauses, the agreement itself, the assignment agreement. Can you specifically tell the people of this country watching us, what would this government use the $500 million for?
You are saying that you expect that to be in this agreement?
That's what I told you.
No, you know it cannot be in this agreement. So
when we use the Sino-Hydro, Parliament was given...
No, the agreements that have been passed are not agreements that should contain what the money is to be used for.
That is why I'm saying that. No, that is why I'm saying that. In the spirit that inform what happened with our resources relative to the gas project. And remember the gas project, Parliament gave the approval directly that use it for this particular thing. 12 landing beaches, among other things. In this particular case, do we know as a people what we'll be using the money for?
Edwigi.
Yes.
So that is a legitimate question to ask, and everybody has asked that question. You have heard the responses from the deputy minister. You have heard the responses from the minister.
They give vague
you are
answers.
Not satisfied
that will
with
use it. No,
is that the case?
No, they give vague answers.
Okay,
that
so
will
they are
use
giving
it.
you answers.
No, they say infrastructure project.
Okay.
I'm saying that similar transactions.
But I need you to tell me that the Minerals Royalties Investment Agreement, the Relationship Agreement, the Mineral Revenue Management Agreement, the Operation Management Agreement, and the Assignment Agreement. You have referred also to the indemnity deed and the rest of them. You are saying you expected what the money will be channeled into and what the investments that will come, the 51% that government will hold, the specific projects they will go into to be in any of these documents. You still insist?
What I have indicated that at the time Parliament of Ghana approved all of these transactions, we ought to know that this is not money that will come. We'll put back into the consolidated fund. The very reason why we decided to create the myth is that we'll have a dedicated fund that will manage our mineral royalty. So if you go and bring the money, Samson, and the money gets it back into the consolidated fund, used to pay salaries. I'm just saying.
It won't go to consolidated fund.
No, you cannot.
If you read the processes, it doesn't go to the consolidated fund.
What you are not getting is that if the 500 million at the end of the day, we get it. The minister...
It doesn't go to consolidated fund.
You are not getting my point. What I'm saying is that Minister Ofori-Atta, if he's the Minister of Finance now up to when this money will be realized, has the discretion to decide. And I'm saying that where you have specific project tied...
No, he doesn't have the discretion to decide, because the fund, the law setting up the fund, gives the fund the power as to how to invest the money and how to use it.
And when you speak to government communicators, all they say is that the money will be used for infrastructure development, without more. And I'm asking you that with the people watching us today, tomorrow, if this money comes and minister decides A, B, C, D is what I intend, or the fund, or its governing trustees decide that this is what we intend to use the fund for, can you stop them?
I think now you are clear on it, that
yes.
If the fund decides what it has to be used.
Yes, but I'm saying that, you see, but I'm saying that, something.
And the fund belongs to government.
All funds belong to government.
No, the fund we are talking about here.
It's government of Ghana.
Belongs to government.
Government of Ghana.
And
100% sharehold.
Correct. So if they say it will be used for projects A, B, C, what is your distrust about the fund being able to utilize it?
I just made a point right now. That, for instance, when we put up GET Fund, we said for educational infrastructure and other related educational matters. When we put together ESLA, it was to retire funds coming from or associated legacy debts, among other things. So if tomorrow, government of Ghana proceeds from ESLA, you use it to pay pensions, quite clearly, would you be working within the terms? And so these are the issues that we are raising. That
is it right to compare loans, loan arrangements to an equity arrangement where we set up a company that we own?
Let us not confuse our people. As we speak, government of Ghana, for instance, had used GET Fund proceeds to go for 1.5 billion, and the money is to be used for infrastructure projects within the educational sector. Do you get my point? So let the impression not be created as though this is something novel.
No, this is novel. This is not a loan transaction.
I'm not saying, you see, I'm not saying that it is a loan transaction. But remember that
the matters you have referred to, the NDC also complains that the government has mortgaged the GET Fund receivables.
Which is true.
For a particular purpose. So that's what you are referring to.
Yes.
They have mortgaged the energy sector levies for a particular purpose, and that's what they are using them for.
Bauxite as well for Sino-Hydro.
Of course, we know specifically what is going to. These are, and the road fund. So we are talking about loan arrangements which are supposed to...
Samson, when the Sino-Hydro transaction came, and the NDC raised the question that this so-called barter arrangement, in fact, is a law, for which we even complained to the IMF and the World Bank, that the amount should add up to our public debt. That conversation was discussed on this very platform. They said, no, it was not a loan, it was a unique. But at the end of the day, we still aim to get to pay whatever it is. It is the state that is responsible for it.
At the end of the day, was it adjudged to be a loan? You went to the World Bank to find out whether it would be a loan.
No, but you were raising the issue of loan and equity. And I'm saying that this is just worse.
Okay.
In fact, all we are doing is to raise funds for projects.
They are seeking to raise non-debt funds. That's what they are doing.
And you know why? And you know why? It's a simple thing. We have borrowed so much that now we want vehicles that we can use to offload the public debt, so that the debt of our public will be lower.
We haven't forgotten that you are there, and Dr. Mantea, we haven't forgotten that you're also supposed to be on the line. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is News File. Your most authoritative news analysis platform is brought to you by Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner. MTN everywhere you go. Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Consolidated Bank Ghana, we stand with you. Durafloss, where Durafloss goes, water flows. We lead, we build you, home for you. Star Assurance, your solid partner. And Rehoboth Properties. Let me share a couple of messages with you, and then we'll continue in the last about 20 minutes that we have, and to see how we can shape the path going forward on this issue. Guy G says that MPP shouldn't have been subjected to defend this deal at this time, so close to elections. Instead of manifesto discussion, see what we MPP have done to ourselves. It takes only corruption perception to lose an election. Where were our so-called intellectuals? NDC walked out of parliament when the law establishing a Japa Royalties Limited was passed. We have given them a campaign message. I wait for my party, Guy G, in Newark, New Jersey. But what is inaccurate is that the law establishing a special purpose vehicle, they worked out on it. They didn't work out on a law establishing a special purpose vehicle. They actually were not against it at all. So that's why we must hold them to tell us where exactly they depart. Because in principle, they voted for that law.
I've said it here.
Right. They voted for that law. That empowered the fund to set up a special purpose vehicle and to deal as a commercial entity with the independence that it needs to be able to work.
That was my preliminary comment.
That was a preliminary comment.
Yes, that was my preliminary comment.
Manche Bruce, the second in Takra, this says, the NDC has no moral turpitude to criticize the Ejapa deal after sleeping on the job for over 2 years in Parliament. I am yet to hear a superior argument from them regarding how bad the deal is. Their evasive arguments and pontifications would lead us nowhere. By the way, why have you put both Tony Obing and Eduji, who are NDC members, together on the show? Why isn't there an MPP representative there?
But you gave 1 hour uninterrupted to the finance minister.
Okay. Maybe we should not be commenting about this.
It's okay, let's proceed.
The thing Eduji has done to me on social media, and the NDC people have done to me last week and this week. You know, we put out the flyers ahead of the show, and then they will come and take me to the cleaners for not putting NDC people on the show. Meanwhile, they don't even know who we have arranged to come on the show.
And by the way,
from the arrangements that were being made yesterday, at the time when you were complaining about this, the production team tell me that they have been working with the NDC since Wednesday. So anyway,
but we can okay.
And you know, anything you put on my wall gets published on some media platform.
Oh, no, I didn't know about that.
They took the easy one and they put it on my name.
I was surprised. You know, but you know that we shared it together.
All right. Okay, so I just read Manche Bruce's comments. I've got a couple more of your comments here. All right. Will the finance minister, with the benefit of hindsight, have submitted the JAPA contract to Parliament earlier than 48 hours to its rising? Okay. That's a question by Sam. Now, let me get back to you guys in the studio. And so, can we be able to tell this? Let me start with you. Can we tell this? As we sit, if, as the government suggests, the NDC actually experimented this module, what exactly is your point of departure as far as this thing is concerned? If it is the consultation or time, at this time, have you not received enough information?
Shall I respond? Thank you. I have with me the Cabinet Memorandum on the establishment of a national vehicle to hold all of government good interests. Ministry of Finance, Economic Planning, Dr. Kobna Dufour, and is dated 17th day of December 2010. And when this matter went to Cabinet, the Attorney General at that time was asked to provide his legal opinion on the transaction. And in the legal opinion of the Attorney General took the view that you cannot use funds belonging to the public, because royalties are public funds, for the purpose of what is envisaged. And so the Attorney General's legal opinion, among other things, informed the decision to abandon this. And that's almost like 10 years ago. And so I find
you can't use public funds
for the purpose of this.
For the purpose of this?
Yes.
And that opinion is cast in stone?
No.
Is it a superior opinion?
No, the point I'm making is that the president then had to defer to the superior opinion of the Attorney General of the day. Unlike in this case, where, for instance, the president gave executive approval to the transaction, operationalizing the transaction, even before his Attorney General, who is supposed to be his principal legal advisor, proffered his opinion. And in fact, you notice that the executive approval is dated 22nd March 2020. Look at the various legal opinions proffered by the Attorney General. They so happen, even after all these transactions have gone through the processes. Question: if the president's legal advisor now gives an opinion that is more or less contrary, then there will be a pressure, more or less, on the Attorney General to tailor the opinion to fit that particular narrative. And that is why I'm saying that in your initial, attempt to hold me to straight proof.
Can I ask you a question? What's the best approach? That cabinet must first
listen to your lawyer.
Wait. That cabinet must first have a say on what it wants to do before it goes to the lawyers for them to advise, or should be the other way around?
You want to do something. Agreements come. Cabinet evaluates everything and gives approval, and executive approval. Now, you do not want a situation, and with the greatest respect, where, for instance, in the American miscellaneous thing, executive approval is given, meaning that the presidency, cabinet, and everything is okay. The thing goes to Parliament, and then we realize that the price has been inflated, and then the entire thing is abandoned. You do not want that kind of situation. So you listen to your lawyer, who is your Attorney General, that this is what we intend to do. As president, I intend to give a legal executive approval relative. What do you say to that? Your lawyer says, go ahead, do not. Now you have a situation where the transaction is done. You now go to the lawyer. The lawyer, this is what I want to do. I have it done. What do you have to say? Then the lawyer provides all of this.
So I'm asking you a very simple question. In the scheme of things in running like a government, even take your company, if you were running your company, you are telling me that before the board will decide on a particular project, on how they want to, realize the vision or the dreams and goals of the entity, they will first go to a lawyer before they take the decision, or that the decision will actually be taken and then a lawyer will be asked to advise.
Senior, in answering this question,
are you not turning the
method? I'm not turning anything. And you see it demonstrating in the transaction and how it was executed. For instance, on the 18th day of June 2020, this is a letter coming from Minister Ken to the Secretary to the President, Nana Asante Bediachu.
You see, in Martin Amidu's situation, this whole project went to Parliament even before Martin Amidu was given the opportunity to look at it. Wait. I'm telling you the correct trajectory.
No,
this is not speculation.
No,
now wait.
This is not a question of speculation.
Now wait.
Proceed.
Parliament, we have to ask the question, did it approve the budget for it? In Martin Amidu's advice, did he not indicate that he had not even received the full complement of the documentation to enable him to come to a firm conclusion on what should happen?
So the point I'm making is that to avoid that kind of situation, you need the lawyer's advice. So you come back to the same point, where if the lawyer with a full complement now tells you that I've given you a no objection, when you go ahead and do it, you will not have this kind of situation.
They say when you go to equity, you go with clean hands.
My hands are very clean.
No, you are
my hands are very clean. I have demonstrated to you that
they do it
this
differently.
No, I'm saying that
you didn't do it that way.
I'm saying that this is a transaction that was shelved 10 years ago. I am surprised that today we have decided to do something that is inimical to the economic interests of this republic. And when we are put to straight proof, we go back and take something that was abandoned 10 years ago as justification why we have to go on this path. That, please, should not be the conversation today.
Okay.
In any case, the establishment of the Ghana Gold Company was a matter that was completely, and you notice that throughout the 4-year administration of John Mahama, this matter never came up in any of our national conversations. You cannot compare the situation where you can see clear cases of conflict, clear cases of lack of transparency, clear cases of infractions of laws, and then you say 10 years ago, similar thing happened. That should not be a national conversation today.
Thank you. Now, let me come to you. So, how do you juxtapose what he's saying now on questions of principle purely? Is the NDC being candid?
Absolutely.
When it participated in 2018 in passing the law itself, this is the mother legislation. And in that legislation, it agreed. It did not disagree. It did not suggest, there's nothing to suggest that it even remotely, had any concerns about things like this. Look, it empowered the fund to do these number of things. Seek the best possible financial returns on investment having regard to internationally recognized best practices. It should disburse 20% of the mineral income received by the fund to Minerals Development Fund.
Absolutely.
Hold and manage minerals equity interest of the Republic and exercise all rights related to the minerals equity interest. Manage, deal in, and invest minerals income accruing to the Republic received by the fund. You say they can do all of these things. They should set up a special purpose vehicle for the purposes of all of these things. What is the point of disagreement today?
Yes. Something, as I started with, I mean, I am not, and I'm not stating the position of the NDC because I don't have the power to do that.
No, I'm saying listen to them, and then on the basis of the law, juxtapose what they are saying.
That's right.
Does it make sense to you?
So the idea that we should look for more for our mineral royalty receipt is fundamental. For me, it's very important, and I see that as being what the act is saying and what the proposal is also saying.
More.
And for this Ejapa thing, if indeed it seeks to maximize the receipt.
No, you see, he made a point that they took an Attorney General's advice,
yes.
Amidu, that you can't use public funds for this kind of project. So why do you pass a law that allows this kind of project? That's a question I'm asking.
Well, I mean, if the position of the Attorney General was reviewed to see that there is a possibility of getting more for the resource that we have, then I'm sure it doesn't go against the interest of the state for that to happen. So for me, I don't have an issue with that. So now,
on principle, then it is wrong, and we have to say it is wrong for the NDC to suggest that their time they abandoned it on a principle that you cannot use public funds for a special purpose vehicle in monetizing royalties.
You see,
when in 2018 they, without any equivocation, endorsed a law for that purpose.
Something before you answer, when the NDC came, this government had a whole idea of how to use some of the receivables. So, for instance, ESLA, they had to create ESLA PLC to use it to do this kind of transaction. So government had its own policy orientation, and that is what that's
since this is my
it's your turn.
I'm just trying to
all over.
Thank you.
So, but I mean, I think that if a government has its plan, and it doesn't go against the interests of the state in trying to rake more for the receipt from mineral resources, I don't think there's a problem for probably NDC supporting that. Look for more from the mineral royalty receipt. Now, what I have issue with, I mean, and I'm coming from the public. I am coming from the public and NGO, a citizen of this country, that you have an agreement that doesn't have a termination clause, or the type of termination clause that you have. I don't know, you are lawyers, and I wonder any agreement of this sort would have a no termination.
No, my senior will not one from his chamber.
Yeah. So I believe that that's an issue for us. We are worried.
There's no termination in this agreement.
Yes, but the nature of the termination clause that you see, wait. Yeah, please.
When we are speaking to documents and the facts, let's not suggest otherwise. You cannot say there is no termination in this agreement.
I said the nature of the termination.
I said the nature.
Yes.
No, you said where there is no termination.
Or the nature of the termination that you see.
Where it's conterminous with the mining, the life of the lease.
Yes, and you know, the life of the lease is actually not definite.
Yes.
I mean, in terms of the total number of mines that are involved, each mining company may have different mining lease period. So it is not sort of one fit all size. Company A may have 25 years, some may have 15 years, some may have different years. So that again, it's an issue that is worrying to us. Again, for ousting the powers of the judiciary, parliament, and even the public from, in a way, criticizing the agreement or the deal is also an issue that worries us.
Do you have the relationship agreement?
Thank you.
Do you have the relationship agreement?
Thank you. I do. Yes. Dr. Theo Champong.
Oh, and he's still there. Sorry.
Yes, you forgot about it.
It can't be the lawyers. The lawyers have been right.
Sorry.
Yes, on the term of the lease, make the comment, but I just want to read one paragraph for the concluding part of Martin Amidu's advice. He said, "It is my advice that before the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning takes any further step in this matter, it should hold discussions with the Ministry of Lands and Forestry to enable the two ministries brainstorm on the appropriate mechanism to achieve the objects contemplated in your letter under reference."
And it was abandoned.
No. So hold on. If you say Amidu says you cannot do, you have misrepresented Amidu.
You have misrepresented
him.
No,
he didn't say
I am
you
saying
cannot
that
do. He says
No.
He says,
can you read the
before
entire
you take,
opinion?
You take
It is not fair. It is not fair.
I will not read the entire. I'll read the conclusion.
It is not fair you go to conclusion because if you pick even Gloria Kufu's audio opinion, her conclusions are always different in terms of tenor.
So,
but you see,
let me finish.
You
so
see, even the point you are raising
the
about
Minerals Development Fund Bill can serve as a basis of these discussions. And even the very last paragraph before he signs off, he says, "It is my hope that you will find the foregoing opinion useful to you in coming to a decision as to the most efficacious mechanism and process to use in establishing the entity to hold the nation's gold interest without sacrificing the inalienable patronymy of the citizens of Ghana entrusted into the trusteeship of the president." This was not a outright rejection by the Attorney General.
What do you mean by that?
Let's hear you.
I mean, look, we are dancing around the same issue. Bottom line is, fast forward 2010, or 2018, the Minerals Income Investment Fund was created, which gives the state the ability to collect these mineral royalties that were going hitherto into the consolidated fund. So whether or not it was legal, etc., clearly, I mean, there's the legal regime around that, and the government can create, and Somoto has actually done that. The question really is on the lease itself. And remember, there are 48 leases in question here, covering 18 mineral projects, 2 of which are prospecting licenses, so they are not sort of producing as yet when you read Schedule 1 of the agreement. And when you read Section 2.2, as you read, the way I see it is, as at the date that the last of the leases has expired or being sort of renewed. What I infer from this, really, from a policy angle, is that do we envision the SPV, through which we've assigned these rights to, listing on the stock market in perpetuity? Basically, is it going to be after 30 years still be listed and, you know, declaring dividend, etc.? Or do we then envision closing the fund, you know, at some point when the last of those leases has expired? So it's a fundamental point which I suspect was sort of framed in legal language.
What do you say about the argument that you are setting up a company to deal in a certain business? Why do you give it a timeline to work? A company, you are setting up a company.
Well, in this case, it's a company, but it's also a fund. And there are funds that are closed, you know, like once you achieve the objective, you can actually close the fund. So what is very important is, of the 48 leases, when does the last of them expire? Because that then would tell you when, in principle, you would expect the fund to have closed down. Or if the government or whoever is in question at that point in time decides to extend the renewal of the license, then does the fund still continue operating and still generating dividends and paying back, you know, to the state? That is where I think we need to discuss. But as to the legalities.
Yeah, thank you very much. We've run out of time. And thank you also very much. Dr. Theo Achampong is economist and political risk analyst. Dr. Tony Obing is founder and president, Africa Institute of Extractive Industries. He has served in this office previously, so this is the basis on which he is participating in this discussion. Godwin Eduji Kujo Tameklo is lawyer, member, NDC National Communication and Legal Team. Unfortunately, Dr. Steve Manteyao today again was unable to join us. My name is Samson Ladi Ayanini. Have a good afternoon.